All right, and welcome back to the RLR podcast. Oh, we've got definitely a new show this week. I will say. We're gonna we're gonna change it up a little bit this week. We've been gone for 2 weeks. We had a lot happen in those two
Lots of
weeks. Lot,
lots of stuff.
Lots of new stuff. For those of you who might be first time listeners, thanks for popping in. I'm Nick. That is Matt.
I'm
Um, And yeah, so we are the guys from RLR, and this is our podcast. Now, new segment alert, which is kind of, I guess I should explain how we're doing the podcast. And we're trying this week, and maybe you can give us some feedback on our podcast email or our social media, which is podcast email is podcast@redlineresorts.com. Social media is at Redline Resorts on all platforms. But so we're breaking it down this week. We're gonna have rolling start, which is all of our automotive news topics, things like that. Anything that we're keeping on the
Think of
ground.
things that go on that are on the ground.
Yeah, we're keeping that on the ground. Then we're gonna have our paddock chat. That's gonna be our motorsports, F1, Formula E, DTM, that kind of stuff. We're gonna have down the jetway. That is all of the stuff that is not staying on the ground, and so that's planes, aeronautics, any kind of that news. And then we've got a new segment called Fuel for Thought, which is just gonna be Matt and I kind of diving deep into some stuff. Not too deep, but giving our thoughts, going a little bit more in depth on a single specific topic. So we're going to see how this goes. You let us know how it goes. But why don't we go ahead and start with rolling start, Matt?
Cool. Do you want to hit us off first?
Yeah. Let's see what we
Actually,
got.
one thing real quick, I want to say that I think there's a lot of weather impacting. We want to say the continental lower 48 of the United States. So if we have any listeners or anyone who's been paying attention to the weather, for those petrol heads, sitting down south, currently experiencing snow and cold temperatures in places like Texas, where you don't usually get cold temperatures or snow. Please be careful. There are sounds reports of numerous inches of snow, which here in the Chicagoland area we're obviously used to in the winter. Might not like it, but down there it can be very dangerous. So please be careful on the roads. Please help your neighbors. Watch out for the elderly, do neighbor checks, all that kind of stuff that we've come to expect up here in the winter. Just be careful down there, everybody, and stay safe.
Absolutely, yeah. We don't want to see anybody getting stuck in the multi-car pileups like we've been seeing down in the south. So,
And important for that, I think if you, my parents always taught me that if you end up getting, might not be as bad down there because we have even negative below zero temperature Fahrenheit temperatures up here. Might not be as bad, but if you get into an accident, your best chances of being saved or helped and staying safe is staying in your vehicle. So if you do
yep,
end up sliding off the road, stay in your vehicle.
yeah,
It's your
it,
best form of shelter.
yep. And in addition to that, when it's safe, maybe in the summertime or maybe in the fall time, if it comes around to that time of year, see if you can invest in getting some winter driving courses. You hopefully you may not ever have to use them, but
Hopefully.
I know up here I took a couple winter driving courses when I was first getting my driver's license, and it helped significantly. So
My winter driving courses, I wish I would have taken some courses. Mine were more so grandpa taking me to an abandoned parking lot in the Northwoods of Wisconsin and just slamming on the brakes and feeling the ABS and just having fun. So, yeah, I would say while that's fun and definitely informative, some professionally taught courses might be the better option, especially for
yeah, well,
hazardous
I
winter
mean,
driving.
mine wasn't much different. It was essentially just someone I was paying to take me into a parking lot and let me slide around for a little while. But that's
That
a
might be a
different
better
story.
option than I'm not saying that
Don't go
grandpa
do that
was
now.
wrong.
Stay inside.
Don't go do that now. Stay. It's a little cold. It's a little late for that, frankly.
Well, and don't put yourself at risk getting out on the road. So,
Yeah.
especially down there right now, and even up here in Chicago, you know, where Matt and I
I
are
mean,
based out of.
frankly,
Just it, we know how to
just
handle
be
the snow,
careful.
but be careful. If you don't have to be out right now, don't go out.
I mean, I was always taught automobile is a deadly weapon, so and treat it as such. So no matter how much fun they might be, just be careful. Really, is what
Absolutely.
it comes
Yeah.
down to. Just be careful, everybody, please.
All right, so rolling
With
start's not
that,
off to such a rolling start, but let's get
let's actually get
let's
off
get
to a
into this.
rolling start here.
Um,
So I
so
want to
for
cover
those of you
first.
who listened to our podcast
Yeah,
before we took our little break here, you will know that we're Porsche fanatics. So these
see,
first two stories definitely have to do
should come
with.
as no
Actually,
surprise.
the first three stories have to do with Porsche. So obviously, big news out of Porsche: the new GT series car coming out, the GT3 of the 992 variant of the 911.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to those who don't know Porsche numberings, that was a very confusing sentence. Um,
And
nine
992 is the newest generation of the 911. The 911 being the famed 911,
name
sports
badge, yeah.
car. I mean, just all around amazingness. And the GT3 being a special, shall we say,
It,
race oriented or
it's a race
variant
oriented
of it,
road car. Let's be honest.
essentially. And I think it's dropping officially. There's been we've talked about it on a previous episode. I think there's been some images, and we talked about like the wing. I think in a couple episodes ago, but I believe the official release date is actually February 16th. So by the time this comes out, it could be the day of, because we're recording on the 15th. So I
Correct.
am excited for tomorrow to see. Well, frankly, what I kind of already am expecting to see officially, but drops tomorrow, 16th of February, I believe.
Yes.
Don't know what time, but sometime tomorrow, probably in the morning, knowing how they do things.
Porsche also dropping the hammer on the. What do you call? You don't. I guess. Do you call it an accelerator pedal in an electric car? But
I guess it would still be the accelerator.
in a physics term, I
Still
won't even. I won't
acceleration.
get into the physics of it, but technically, accelerator is a
The
bad term
go.
even in the
How about the
physics. But
go stick?
the go pedal.
The go pedal. There we go.
There we go. So the go
The
pedal.
the power
Porsche
meter. The
dropping the
power
go
meter.
pedal or the I'll call it the torque conversion pedal. Um, Porsche's Taycan, I believe it was the Taycan Turbo S,
Yeah,
beat
it was.
the new or is now the holder of the indoor speed record, fastest speed achieved inside a building with.
I don't know what previously held the record, but I don't really see that as a surprise. Just an electric car in general with any acceleration and instant or continuous instant acceleration you can achieve, that doesn't really come as a surprise to me, frankly. I'm not. I mean, it's cool that it's Porsche, but I would expect to see numerous electric manufacturers, challenge that in the coming years anyway. And frankly, standard internal combustion engines might want to take that title back. But
Yeah, I
for
want to say
now,
one of the first holders of it was Tanner Faust with
I
the
was gonna say the same thing. I thought
with
with
his
the Black 488, no 458, wasn't it?
no, what was it,
I thought it was a 458 Italia. He did that in.
and then I think he also did it in his
Oh,
spec
that's
rally
right.
car.
Production car. It was a black 450 Ferrari Italia, but
Tanner
in
did it
terms of
in.
the record holder, yeah, I believe it was his rally car did it faster, but not a production car, obviously.
Right.
Highly customized, specially tuned rally car. But nonetheless, I don't know what previously held the record, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't happy that the Taycan now holds the record. And moving along with the Taycan stuff, I don't think we've referenced it, but it looks like Porsche will be releasing a cheaper rear-wheel drive Taycan model, which I'm not sure when that's debuting for certain. I think that's old news by now, but the reason why I want to bring that up is because Audi dropped their e-tron GT. So that's been a little bit of a buzz, I think, comparing that to the Taycan right now. And for those who may not know, the Audi e-tron GT is very close to the concept car and is basically the car that Iron Man or Tony Stark drove in the Marvel Avengers Endgame movie. I believe it was orange, if I remember. Or no, that was actually no. I'm not sure what color it was, but that's the car that he drove. They're taking the fight to obviously in the EV market, and from what I'm hearing reports, it's a cheaper, apparently cheaper and more comfortable Taycan. I gotta say, I really like the look of it. It looks quote Audi quality, frankly, inside and out. And I think that I don't know if you've seen it much, Nick, but I think that the best view of the car is like the rear left quarter panel angle. I love the way this thing looks from the rear up through the a little bit more muscular side. But I do have to say, I'm kind of torn. I love the way the front of the Taycan and how that looks very futuristic, but I love the way even more that the Audi looks from the rear, and I'm kind of torn. I mean, I don't know
I
which one
I
looks better.
personally will disagree with you. I think it looks better from the front than the rear. But then again,
Really,
you have a thing for slopebacks like coupe style cars.
I really do.
And we've had this discussion with the Cayenne coupe. We've had this discussion with a wide
Yeah,
variety of cars at this point.
yeah.
RS6 versus RS7. I think we've had that conversation
Oh,
before.
we were at an auto show years ago, just quite
Yeah.
literally staring at an RS7, talking about it for what seemed like a long time.
Speaking of which, I'm the auto show was supposed to be last week in Chicago, but of course that got postponed
Yeah,
with COVID. Um,
thanks, COVID.
yeah, but I
Man, I don't know.
yeah, but that you've got a thing for coupes. I
I really do.
I like the Porsche better. I think ultimately I like everything about the Porsche better, but I
Really?
really
Okay.
I don't I'm not impressed. Let me put it that way. I'm not impressed by the rear of the e-tron GT. I actually think the front end looks more aggressive
Front is
and
very
style.
aggressive. I think if you were comparing, frankly, what it comes down to me is like the rear end, the rear half of the Porsche is Porsche, right? Porsche design, what you would come to expect, in my opinion. The rear half of Audi is more simplified, more minimalist compared to some more muscly Audis,
Yeah, it
and
just
the front
to
end
me
is more
if I
futuristic, right, with a Porsche. But with the e-tron GT, that front end is very aggressive, and
it's
I do
very
like it.
Audi though.
It is.
That here's what I'll say.
It's very
To
Audi
me,
RS.
the side profile and the back profile looks like a modern TT, and I've never been a fan of the TT.
Mm,
To me,
I can see in
that's
it, but
I'm not saying it is a TT. I'm not saying
yeah.
that it's exactly like it, but to me, that's the kind of visual that I'm getting from it.
Hmm.
I'm personally not the biggest fan
When
of
you
that.
point it out, I mean, I guess I can see it when you point it out, but I'll have to disagree with you there. I think we have clearly differing opinions on the car. Although what I will say is, it looks like they're doing something better than Porsche's Taycan is doing, and that's manually adjustable climate vents. I don't know. We never talked about that, but I hate the Taycan's climate vents, or at least the first edition. I'm not sure if they've changed it yet, but you have to electronically tell the air where to go through the touchscreen and infotainment versus just having a movable climate vent. I mean, come on. Let's not try to reinvent the wheel here at Porsche. But to that point, I think the interior is great. I can't speak to the actual performance, and we obviously haven't seen much from it yet. But for what it looks like is the article that I'm reading here from Adam Ismail from Jalopniks at the end says that the e-tron GT will start at about 99,800 euros, about 120, a little over 120 grand in Germany. And the RS e-tron will start at 132.8 euros, about 160 grand, or $160,000 in Germany. And for reference, the rear The base rear wheel drive. I always hate that like hyphenated thing. Taycan starts about 83,000 euros, which is about 100 grand in dollar dues. And it sounds like if they come out Audi with a slightly smaller, cheaper rear wheel based e-tron GT, they could undercut even the cheapest Porsche Taycan. And I'm gonna be interested to see how this thing sells over the Taycan, frankly. Um, Obviously Porsches are expensive, but from what I'm reading, it seems like it's a cheaper Taycan, and that might sell well, frankly, considering how well the Taycan's selling. So I don't know, man. I definitely still like Taycan better, but might have a little bit of a war on our hands. Maybe smartly undercutting Porsche. For as much as I love Porsche, I can't fault Audi for some smart business decisions. So we'll see.
We will definitely see. Um, in other automotive news besides the kind of brothership that is Audi and Porsche. Um, for those of you who don't know, they're owned by the same parent company, the Volkswagen Group. But
Yeah.
um, Alpha, DS, and Lancia, however you want to pronounce it, in whichever part of the world you're in. We're in the States, so I think the going term is
Yeah.
Lancia. Um,
I like Lancia better.
I do too, but uh, looks like they are going to start working on some joint models of some SUVs, leading into their dip into the EV market as well. It's
I guess everybody's going, man. I mean, it's cool to see it. We're seeing a huge. I can't help but think that give it's the current market changes over the last year. We're seeing. I mean, I feel like it's every day we're seeing new EV stuff, new partnerships, new this, new that. I mean, again, I look forward to the eventuality that is the electric vehicle market, and it's going to be along for the ride.
yeah.
It's interesting. Another thing that I saw, it's kind of I think big news in terms of you know parent companies. We recently had what Stellaris with the Chrysler and I think it was what Fiat merger, right?
Well, no,
Or
Fiat had already owned Chrysler. That was FCA, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles.
who did they merge? It was a
They
European brand.
they merged with Peugeot.
That's what okay. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. So with another I guess like parent company kind of top end automotive news that I saw on I think it was the 3rd of February is the I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Daimler and Mercedes essentially split. So for those who may not know, quick gist: Daimler Mercedes Benz. Daimler is the parent. Is the name of the company that owns both Mercedes Benz and the I think if not the largest, one of the largest semi truck manufacturers. And apparently, Daimler Truck is going to be listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, and that's supposed to be completed before this year's end, 2021. And thus, it looks like that namesake is splitting to kind of separate those two business markets because you have the Mercedes Benz cars and vans and all and that kind of line of business and those customers versus Daimler trucks and buses and things like that. Two very distinct business markets for Daimler, essentially, right? It sounds like with the public, going public with the Daimler truck, they're going to separate those business streams, and Mercedes Benz will be renamed as just essentially only Mercedes Benz. Might not be, I would argue most people think about Mercedes Benz that way, but maybe a bit of more of a technicality, but it's a big deal for to separate those the brands and separate the business lines for Daimler Benz. So rest in peace, Daimler, and long live Mercedes Benz is the article from Eric Schilling on Jalopnik. So it's interesting little tidbit. I don't think we'll see much change. It's more of a rebranding or anything, but a historic rebranding and separation nonetheless, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
yeah. And the last thing I have, frankly, for Rolling Start here for automotive news is Actually, you know what? I think that we should roll in. I should save this and roll. We should roll into paddock chat here.
Being that it is motorsports related, I would say yes.
Yeah.
So
Well, then
why don't we
let's
move
do
on
that.
over to paddock chat?
Formerly may have known as at the F1 section, we're kind of rebranding our segments here, a little bit of more organization to the spider web of thoughts that we have every week.
Yes.
So, to start us off in paddock chat this week, I'll hit some NASCAR news. So, Michael Jordan, right?
Yep.
Famed basketball player, very,
Amateur
obviously,
golfer.
in everything, just a whole bunch, right? Tequila connoisseur, I mean, you name it. Apparently, he is now a NASCAR team owner. So I was perusing the interwebs, and apparently, not only is he the owner of the Charlotte Hornets NBA team, but it looks like he is now going to make an official debut as a NASCAR team owner with the 2311 Racing and at the Daytona 500 as well. He's a co-owner with Denny Hamlin, who
That's a
in
big
and of
name
its
in NASCAR.
himself, what, 2 or 3 time Daytona 500 champion, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think 2 or 3 time.
Yeah, we'll have to
And
look that
we'll
up.
have to
But
look that
yeah,
up. And I think I forgot. I think Wallace is going to be their driver. I mean, yeah. I think let me see if I can search the Googles here and confirm this. But it looks like it's a whole lot of comments about Space Jam. Looks like Bubba Wallace is going to be the driver for their team. That's kind of cool, frankly. Michael Jordan's a NASCAR team owner now.
interesting.
I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I mean, not that it wouldn't work, but I don't know. That could definitely bring some diehard Michael Jordan fans to the new NASCAR fans. Frankly, I'll be rooting for the team. Frankly, we'll see what they can do first time out, right? Something I wouldn't expect to find, frankly, over the past couple of weeks of stuff, but cool nonetheless. Something though even cooler in NASCAR is something I had slated for later, but first off, actually, probably should talk about the Daytona 500 yesterday. It's a big fiery crash. I'm not sure if did you hear anything about this, Nick?
No,
Out
I
of
didn't.
curiosity. So I wasn't watching it. I was unfortunately working last night, but it looks like there is at the 60, what year, what annual year is it? Let me check the Googles, make sure I'm looking at the right stuff. So the 63rd annual Daytona 500. Michael McDowell won his first, I think it's his first win in his NASCAR career. It looks like at the end of the race, there was a bunch of fiery crashes, frankly, and that's what kind of led to him winning. Based on reports that I was reading, seems like oh, geez. A crash in the 14th lap took out 16 cars already.
Holy
And then
smokes!
around 3 p.m., there was a thunderstorm delay, and then in the final lap there was a fiery multi-car crash, and it looks like, based on what I'm reading, I want to say that it sounds like McDowell had bumped into a couple of the race leaders that may have started the crash. Don't quote me, that's what some of the sources are saying, but nonetheless, something rare that you don't see and you ever want to see, right, is a fiery crash. We already had one of those in F1 last year. Nonetheless, though, I think early reports are saying all the drivers that were involved walked away okay, and that's a testament to all the safety measures also in NASCAR as well. So I guess a congratulations here to McDowell, and yeah, kind of makes me wish I would have been watching it, man. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, as we've discussed before, I'm not the biggest NASCAR fan. I will follow it when I have the opportunity to, but um, it's
Yeah,
not necessarily something that I always keep 100% on track about. But that is, I'm
yeah.
glad that nobody was seriously injured. Um,
Moving on down on the paddock. I hate to steal a lot of paddock chat here, but
no,
something that I think is really cool is obviously in the current day F1 racing in general is a lot of it's a male dominated sport, right?
Yeah.
And it looks like I want to get the name correct because I do not know much about this driver. However, there is NASCAR. I don't. It's not the Daytona series, but NASCAR is having is her name is Tony Breidinger. I hope I pronounced that right. She's I can believe 21 years old, and she is the first female Arab NASCAR driver, which is pretty impressive, frankly. And she's 21. I mean, could you imagine racing in any NASCAR series as well, something that historic, but let alone at 21 years old? I mean,
And I know the
that's
NASCAR
pretty
Cup Series is the
impressive.
top of the top, but anything NASCAR, that's upper echelon of stock
I
car
believe she's
racing.
the racing in the truck in NASCAR Truck Series too. So
Okay.
I mean, it's the same thing. Yeah, F1 might be the tippy top of Formula racing, but there's F2, F3, and all of these drivers are incredibly talented. So the fact that she'll be racing as a 21-year-old first female Arab NASCAR driver and NASCAR driver in any NASCAR series is pretty incredible. So nothing but a congratulations, and I will be watching to see what she accomplishes. I think we both will. So that's
Absolutely.
cool. You want to take us through some of the Formula Two that's been happening even just today with McLaren's car release? But do you want to take us
Yeah.
through a little bit of
So
F1 stuff? Start us off.
yeah. So today being the 15th on recording day, McLaren has released their car, which uh, curious. Did you? I mean, you took a look at it,
Looks like
right?
the same car.
Yeah, it looks exactly the same.
But then again, McLaren in terms of like cars, yeah, it looks like the same livery, same format. I didn't really expect McLaren to make even sweeping changes in the livery because they had the most work to do out of anyone in off season. They had to redesign their chassis to receive a different power unit.
Yeah.
And they went from Renault to Mercedes. So for this year, from last year to this year, that's a big deal anyway. So I'm not going to fault them for not, having sweeping design changes when they had to, fit a
Right.
new engine in there. So,
Well, essentially, the underneath of the car is completely different. It's what we
oh yeah, for
see
all the
that's
cars.
almost the same. So,
Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes this year is, and I was actually going to go more into this later, but one of the biggest changes for the cars in general is the floor. The
yeah,
new floor is a lot smaller. It's supposed to reduce downforce and make the cars a little slower. A couple other aerodynamic changes with fins around the rear wheels and different shorter, smaller sections. I think the rear diffuser is a little bit different as well. I
they
think
adjusted
they're
some
intended
canards on it.
I think they're intended to slow down the car, but of course, I think teams will be trying to make other changes that will, get them back to their 2020 lap times essentially. So we'll see. But yeah, it's you know released today. I think what else do we have on the docket for car releases? McLaren's was today, in terms of officially released schedules. I think McLaren was today. I have the schedule here. So this is car launch dates for the upcoming season. AlphaTauri is the 19th of February. Alfa Romeo is the 22nd of February. We have good old Mercedes on the 2nd of March, starting March off strong, and then Williams with the March 5th release. And then we have Ferrari, which apparently will be debuting their team on the 26th of February and the car on the 10th of March. Interesting. And the other four constructors, being Alpine, Haas, Red Bull, and Aston Martin Racing, have yet to confirm car release dates. So we'll,
Did
of course,
Did
be
you have
watching to
Williams on
see.
that list, or did I
Yeah,
just?
March
Okay,
5th.
thank you.
Yep, we'll be, of course, be watching to see if we, I am expecting, I'm eagerly awaiting to see what, I think a lot of people, what, Alpine and Aston Martin are going to look like, frankly. So new constructors. So we'll have to see. But
Yeah, I'm especially excited to see Aston.
I really,
Just
yeah, I
it's
really
been
am.
it's been too long since we've seen British racing green on the track.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it's gonna be cool. So with that, what else do we have in F1 news?
well, speaking of
So,
Alpine,
oh yeah, Alonso, you wanna?
yeah, so Um, Fernando Alonso, a very famous driver, very accomplished driver in Formula One,
See,
um, making his second junior debut in the sport. Uh, very unfortunately was involved in a cycling accident.
was hit by
Um,
a car, wasn't he?
yes, which yeah, he was hit by a passing car while he was cycling and training. He is expected to make a full recovery, but he was hospitalized for a couple of days for observation just to make sure. We do wish him the best and hope to see him out. He is home
Yeah,
from the hospital as of today.
I'll say,
Um,
wasn't he discharged today?
yeah,
Correct.
he was discharged today.
It
Um,
looks like they're intending like he'll be ready for the season. Frankly, I think that the season won't start until what, the 28th of March. So we still have some time.
yeah, but
So hopefully, we'll see him
quick
on
and speedy
track.
recovery to get him back in the car. That's our
Well,
hopes.
another quick and speedy recovery, I think, is I'm not sure if he still has it, but didn't Gasly come down with COVID
He
a
yeah,
little while ago?
I want to say that was about 2 weeks ago. Reports were that he was feeling a lot better as of late. So
So another quick and speedy recovery. I mean, no one's immune to the pandemic. Obviously, Hamilton had it. I mean, what didn't Stroll or didn't Stroll have it last year too? I don't know. At this point, I remember who's had COVID.
I
Frankly,
think
amongst
Choco
the
and
grid.
Stroll had it because didn't Hulkenberg
Yeah,
step in for one of
yeah,
them?
you're right. I think you're right. Well, but nonetheless, speedy recovery for for everybody. Frankly, I'm eager to see F1 return. So I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but I'm looking forward to it. Um, I think another thing is worth mentioning isn't F1. This is Formula 3. So did you hear about Correa and his return to the
Yes.
grid?
Yep.
Do you want to hit that?
If I'm understanding correctly, wasn't he a Formula Two driver?
I thought Formula 3, but let me check.
Well, no, he's making an F3 return. But I think originally he was an
Oh,
F2 driver at the time of his accident. So he was in a massive accident that took him out of racing for quite a while.
yeah, let me
Um,
see.
but he is making his
Juan
F.
Manuel Correa. He yes, he was a Formula 2 driver.
Yeah.
The last time he drove was at looks like at Spa in 2019.
Yeah, and he
And
had a horrible, horrible accident.
he goes so far as reading on F1 Formula1.com. It looks like he himself he wasn't the only driver that was badly hurt in that crash, but he himself was spent 2 weeks in a coma, and he suffered severe injuries to his legs, his lungs, and his spine. And he underwent a series of surgeries once he was out of the immediate danger of the shock and whatnot, and has been having here in the U.S. really intense rehabilitation programs. And I mean, it sounds like he's going to step back into the grid in Formula 3. So that's absolutely incredible. I mean, I didn't see the crash, but seeing pictures of the wrecks, and I watched like some montages of his recovery. Yeah, I that is something in and of itself. Along the likes of Grosjean and him recovering from the fiery crash in F1. Even worse, potentially. I mean, you can't say one's worse than the other, right? But in terms of rehabilitation, clearly Carrera's rehabilitation has been a much more grueling road than so far Grosjean's. But I mean, you know, it's just like these drivers care. They want to be they want to be racing. So the fact that Grosjean's healthy enough to compete, I believe in what he's doing. Is it DTM or NASCAR that Grosjean I think is going to be competing in? Something I think I remember reading something about that. Potentially, he's not
I
done
know Kevin
racing.
Magnussen is doing.
I feel like I saw
He's
Grosjean's going to be racing again in Indy, or
well
maybe Indy 500.
that could be, and then
Maybe it's the Indy
yes,
500.
because I think he was also going in for Chip Ganassi because Chip
Mm,
Ganassi brought on Kevin Magnussen as a IMSA driver,
yeah.
and then he was
So I
also
mean,
giving Grosjean the opportunity to drive
yeah.
In the Indy 500 is such an interesting race
Hmm.
due to the fact that you don't have to be a regular Indy Series driver to enter and
Yep.
compete.
Still open wheel, yeah. Yeah. It. I
So
mean, it's great to see these guys getting back behind the wheel. I mean,
it really is.
to fight and go through rehabilitation and suffer through what that they have done. I mean, it's incredible. It's inspiring, frankly, and it makes me happy to see racers return to the seat. So
Well, one
nothing
of the
but the best,
yeah,
frankly.
absolutely, and I absolutely agree. Just nothing but the best for these guys. I will enjoy seeing them back out on the pavement.
To round out paddock chat here, I think we'll stick with some F1. So maybe other notable news here is Hamilton has signed a contract by couple weeks ago by now, and seems like it's just for a year. So that could be both good and bad. Frankly, it could allow him wiggle room to go somewhere else. Frankly, in a year from Mercedes or them to potentially, I think maybe promote Russell up after the year is over. Clearly, there was stuff that Mercedes and Hamilton couldn't agree on, and it was difficult because it took so dang long to sign a contract, and it's only for a year. Where historically, Sir Hamilton has had multi-year deals, so we'll have to see what happens. I think after this year with Hamilton, but it does seem like Mercedes has committed to, I think, working with Hamilton to start a new foundation to for more diversity and inclusiveness in this F1, the sport of F1. So it seems like they're already making good on part of his contract negotiations for a larger role, within the public eye and initiatives and things like in social justice and so on. So obviously that's some big news, but well, I want to see what happens, frankly, after this and see, what kind of. It's kind of like kicking the can down the road.
Right.
We got Hamilton for another year. They're this good, that good, but
We're
what
also
happens
kind of in
after the
that
year's
mid
up?
freeze year.
Yeah,
So
I don't know.
I think
So you could
the
say
real
the same
big
for.
shakeups that we'll see will be next year. However, there will
What do
be
you?
significant shakeups this year as well.
Yeah, I think a couple of the things on here that I've seen is the new CEO of F1, who is Stefano Domenicali. Hope I pronounced that right. Apparently, it's been widely talked about and not liked by fans or teams, I think. Or every team except for Mercedes was in favor of reverse starts potentially as like a new thing to bring to the sport. Seems that the idea of a reverse grid order start has been taken off the shelved by him. Period. But it looks like we could potentially see 3 sprint races this year, with F1 continually trying to reinvigorate the sport. So that could be a big shakeup. Frankly, there's a lot of details to iron out there. For those who may not know, the sprint races would basically take the place, I think, of a qualifying session on a Saturday, and I think like the first 8 finishers would get points essentially, but the questions remain is, well, how many points? Would that be a race in and of itself, or who would get pole? What if someone who qualified number one on pole, but someone who won the sprint race was a different driver? So who then starts pole for the Sunday race? I mean, we could see that. I personally don't like them. I think F1 needs to stop trying to change things. We clearly like the format that we have. It's been the same since like 2006 with, you know, quals, Friday, Saturday, Sunday races, whatever. So that could change, right? Um, Red Bull's a powertrain manufacturer now. New announcement today, right?
Yes.
So that
So,
could be.
well, essentially, they just bought out the rights to build the Honda engines that they're currently using.
Yeah, but I mean, could you like, they're gonna build essentially their own powder units and could potentially supply other teams. I mean, you know, like they're a manufacturer, technic or will be now, and what the heck can they come up with? It would be kind of cool to see what they can do. That who knows how that could shake up stuff, right? I mean, frankly, looking at 2021 predictions, I mean, you got some big shakeups. You got huge aerodynamic changes. You got huge driver shifts amongst teams, right? You've got, I mean, frankly, you've got different power units. I mean, Mercedes, I would say, is my pick for potentially third in the Constructors' Championship. brand new power unit, different manufacturer. Who knows what that could do, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that could have, shake up 2021, frankly, going
Yeah.
back to proving me wrong, right? It's not going to be just a placeholder potentially.
Right. Yeah. This is definitely going to be an interesting season.
I mean, I just saw the day the engine freeze is official,
Yep.
so helps Red Bull out. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes here that could just. I mean, there's tons of rule changes. The one thing I don't think we've talked about. Have you seen the wind tunnel stuff that's going on with the F1?
We did discuss the wind tunnel. It was quite a
But the
while ago, but
breakdown of like the percentage of wind tunnel time by team. Do you
I
see that the
I have
rules?
not seen that yet.
Well, in a nutshell, it looks like this year and moving forward, I don't know how much 100% is. I don't know, like minutes, hours, days, whatever, something like that. But it looks like the fifth place finisher gets 100% of the allotted of the 2021 allotted wind tunnel time. That would be Alpine, previously Renault, currently Alpine, and for every it looks like when you go up an echelon by team or down an echelon, you add 2.5% or subtract. So, for example, Alpine being number 5 has 100% of the 2021 allotted wind tunnel time. Aston Martin, next step up, has only 97.5. Next step up, McLaren, 95. Next step up, Red Bull, 92.5. Top tier echelon, Mercedes, only 90%. Other example, sixth place Ferrari has 102.5% of wind tunnel time, moving all the way down to Williams with 112.5% wind tunnel time, essentially in an effort to, allow what worst performing teams more wind tunnel testing time. And they're talking how teams won't even use that this year. They want to save their wind tunnel time for, more radical car design changes next year because there's so many more restrictions coming down with wind tunnel and the environmental impacts and stuff we've talked about, right? So there's so many little changes happening right now. I love it, but it's so hard to keep up with, frankly.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
There is a lot.
The last thing I want to get your take on, Nick, is something that I have been thinking about. I've been seeing articles pop up. The Red Bull Perez situation. We all and those of us who follow F1 know about the Red Bull second driver situation, right? The cars are designed to suit Max's driving style. Red Bull is fully behind Max and kind of getting him a world championship. And, he gets potentially sometimes car updates even quicker than and sooner than, new technology before the second car does, right? That's been documented and been talked about in the ether amongst the F1 universe, right? So Red Bull's clearly behind Max Verstappen to just bar none. Perez is an accomplished driver, right? Their new second car driver. Is Red Bull even interested in a Perez championship? Because he only has a 1 year, and if he doesn't perform, he's out after a year. If he performs too fast, if he's too slow, right, he's out. If he's too fast, that could ruin their plans for a Max Verstappen show. Frankly, continued Max Verstappen show, and he could also be out for a younger driver who will quote get with the program. So the question is Red Bull even interested in the caliber of a driver that Sergio Perez is? Are they even interested with him winning a championship over Max?
I think that's tough to say, only because I think Christian Horner knows I mean, obviously Christian Horner knows exactly what he's doing with Sergio.
Mm-hmm.
That's without question. I think the idea that they wouldn't want him to win a championship is
Over Max, though. Not in general, over Max.
right, right. I don't know if that's even really going to be a factor because Max is, at least in my opinion, a better driver.
I
And
would argue that.
with the two of them side by side, unless Max has additional issues or car issues, I don't I don't know if it's really
A
that big of a
question.
yeah, I don't know if it's really a question.
I'm 50-50 on it. 50% of me says what you're saying. The other 50% of me says, I think among the shakeups this year, potentially, Perez could be one of them. He's in a top tier team, top tier car. He is a, I'm not saying he's a better driver than Max or, Valtteri, uh, Hamilton, but he is in and of himself, like him by himself, has demonstrated his skill. I believe he is a top tier driver. Um, and
I'm not saying that he's
I
not
think
top
he
tier, and
can. I
I'm not
think
at all
no, I
saying that
don't.
I
That's
don't
not what you're
like
saying.
Checo.
I think for the first time, as long as Red Bull can keep their car issues and errors and under in check, right? They've got a great car, great team. They're rocking in the pits and pit stops, and their power unit clearly, you know, performs, right? And they have the same power unit for this coming up year, right? So I think for the first time, Sergio can give Max a run for his money. And if push comes to shove, if he's too fast, I think that screws with Red Bull's current ethos with the Max Verstappen show. Um,
See,
Now,
but
am I going to say, and that has me worried because I want to see Red Bull on top again. I think Red Bull wants to see Red Bull on top, but Max there. So, I don't
and
know.
I it's hard for me to say because I'm not Christian Horner and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
the Red Bull team. I think it would be very hard for them, even if Sergio did outperform Max, for them to get upset with Sergio. They're clearly
I'm not
bringing
saying
him
they'll
on
get
for
upset.
something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'd be upset. No one would be upset with the world championship, right? But I what I could foresee happening potentially is Sergio. Let's say Sergio outperforms Max, and they get a world somehow they get a world championship over Mercedes, and blah blah blah, right? And hypothetically, right? Sergio, and I could plainly see that ruins their Max Verstappen show plans. And even if Sergio won or outperformed Max this year, he'd be
Okay,
out
maybe
after
you
this
need to
year.
explain to me what you're talking about with this Max Verstappen show because I don't
They're
understand
clearly
what you're talking
behind.
about.
Red Bull is maybe to a fault, clearly fully invested and only really invested in Max, right? No one can really compete with him both on on skill and just
Yeah,
like
but
Ferrari.
he's a tier 1 driver.
Exactly. I'm not saying he's not, but Red Bull is clearly, no matter the talent with Verstappen, invested in making Max a champion. And given the churning that they have in Red Bull's second seat, always they're fully focused on Max
Well,
versus
yeah, I
the
understand that.
entire package of what both of them could bring. I think that Perez will challenge Max more and we'll see even better performance out of Max. But it makes me pose the question for the first time. I think Max has a legitimate team member that can challenge him. And what if he
Yeah,
does challenge him to even more than what we're expecting? What's Red Bull going to do? They're, one could argue with their second seat churning, they had been quote unquote forced to focus on Max. What happens if they're not forced anymore? And the quote unquote, we're 100% invested in only Max kind of you know rumors that have always circulated around Red Bull are more so shown. Potential. This is hypothetical, right? But it's something I've been wondering, frankly. So,
yeah, I just find it hard to believe. One, I don't necessarily think that it's an issue, but two, I find it very hard to believe that Red Bull would look down upon giving Max competition. I think if anything, that's only going to make Max a better driver than what he is now.
yeah, I guess I'm not coming across the way I want to. I think frankly what I'll have to see is my thoughts here are twofold. I got to see, in my mind, how Perez performs. Right, if he's fast enough that Red Bull, it's how quick is he? Right, I mean, if he's too slow, he's out after this 1 year contract. Right, if he can keep up, or he's quote unquote too fast, and pushes Max or challenges Max too much. That's an if, right? Then we'll have to see in turn. Then the second part of that would be, well, then what's his contract look like if it's with Red Bull or maybe even not? after this year. But first all, it
I just
depends on
don't.
how he performs.
Yeah, and maybe I'm
I've
still not.
always
Maybe I'm
seen,
still not understanding it. But to
I don't
me,
know, I've
I
always seen
just
Red Bull as the Max show. I mean, I gotta be honest, I love Red Bull, but it's the Max show. And
yeah.
whereas I
Okay,
think they
I
should be
understand
both,
that. But why wouldn't they want it to be the Max and Checo show?
because it's the Max show.
So what?
They want a world championship with Max.
Okay, that's fine, and they can give that to him.
What happens if it's a world championship with somebody else? They're building their new brand and thing the helm. If you have some new new teammate that throws a monkey wrench in those plans, that could be a problem for their branding efforts and how they're designing and evolving the team. It's something that I've seen talked about, I mean, for years now, frankly. Ever since like I think Ricardo, I've been paying attention to rumors and articles since Ricardo, but I don't know, man.
Maybe we look further into this and we talk about this next week. But that
Okay, just want to get your
I
initial
would like
thoughts.
to look a little bit further into that because I really, and maybe it's just my business brain, but I'm having a really hard time wrapping my head around the fact that they would think that someone is too fast, because ultimately a win is a win, and let's be honest, these are businesses, and a win is
Mm-hmm.
money. Why, if they can sell more Checo merch, do you know how much money Checo has coming in behind him from the country of Mexico?
I mean, a lot. I'm not saying it's.
I mean,
I'm not
it's just
saying
it's
that
hard for
my
me.
thoughts are right. I'm just saying it's worth.
No,
It's
I think
undeniable that Red Bull has been the Max Verstappen show, and I think it
I
poses the question now.
I think yeah, I think absolutely. I think it definitely poses the question. You know, I just have a hard time seeing them not adapt to the Max and Checo show. But that's I'll look a little bit further into this and we'll talk about
I mean,
this next
frankly, they
week.
might not be forced to, right? Like it could be, it could be the same situation, but Max has more actual like support and more a teammate that can actually, like Mercedes obviously is a good team with Valtteri and Hamilton, you know, that could be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and clearly Mercedes has been the Hamilton show for a very long time as well.
Well, I mean, you could potentially even pose the same question: would Mercedes even be interested? Okay, maybe before this year because they might have a little bit of sour taste in their mouth from potential contract negotiations with Hamilton, but like before this year, if this was 19 going 20, would Mercedes even be as interested in a Valtteri world champion versus Hamilton? Same kind of thing. That could be the same potential dynamic that we're walking into here with a new teammate for Max. I
Yeah.
don't know. I guess that's what I'm kind of getting at. I don't know. Interesting. I think we've been going on chat, but maybe it's time to head into fuel for thought. But just
Are we
it's
gonna
got me.
skip completely over down the jetway?
Oh, you're right. I forgot about the actually I think brand new section down the
Yes.
jetway.
So
And I'll shut up and I think I'll let you take.
yeah, I think I've got majority of down the jetway, at least for this week.
Let me go grab my carry on.
Just make sure it's within the size restrictions. And since we are kind of running a little long already on this podcast, I'll hit some of these quick hits. Big news out of the 737 Maxes. Boeing has been doing a huge push on re-educating the public on the safety and what they've done thus far,
Mm-hmm.
as to adjust this plane to getting it back on the market. I think they've got infographics up now. I'm starting to get Instagram and even Snapchat ads about the safety of the 737 Max, and that's probably just because I've been talking about the 737 Max a lot lately. For those of you who don't know, I have a home cockpit for flight sim, And recently, there was an addition to the new 2020 flight sim with the 737 Max being a payware model that's available. Um, and I've been messing around with that quite a bit,
It's
and
very addicting.
very very addicting. Matt's played with it, but it's, I mean, in me kind of going through that, I think I'm just getting a lot of 737 Max specific news pushed my way in the form of advertisements and things. Um, but that being said, with the 737s becoming ungrounded, we're seeing a lot more. I mean, we're seeing a lot more of them in the sky, and we're seeing a lot more of them being ordered. Biggest ones being, I believe it was. I'll have to double check, but I believe it was Copa Airlines as well as Southwest are in discussions with GE and Boeing about placing, and I'm talking significant 737 MAX orders. Obviously, they've gone through the paces. Southwest has had the Maxes up for a while. Air Canada, who we'll touch on later, has had the Maxes up, and I believe United finally ungrounded and went through the test flights for their first round
I mean,
of the
that's a
Max
big deal.
9s.
Everything's kind of quote unquote getting back to more, frankly, pre grounding. I mean, taking its place back as one of the kings of the air. Frankly, it sounds like.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting to imagine that I want to say it was 1964, the first 737 rolled off the assembly line. And today, I mean, I understand with the grounding, the A320neo from Airbus really started killing it in the market. But with this new Max, Delta's getting on board. I mean, all the major carriers. Delta's on board.
Mm-hmm.
Ryanair in Europe, who's the largest air carrier in the world right now, is going almost entirely Maxes with their new. Well, they've always been a 737 fleet, but I mean they're going essentially to get rid of majority of their aircraft and stick with just using the Maxes.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of some of the NG3 models, or the more recent um, iteration of the 737 before the Max models. But United has some 9s in the air. Air Canada has some 9s in the air. Delta has some 8s in the air. Southwest has some 8s in the air. And the thing is, with everything that happened, rumor is Boeing, for large scale deals, is cutting some significant cost cuts. So these low budget carriers, or we'll call them budget carriers. I wouldn't say low budget, but the overall budget carriers,
Yeah, budget carriers.
Southwest, Spirit, Frontier, even though Frontier is
Totally.
mainly Airbus, but the cost cutters essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Copa and Volaris out of Central America, Ryanair out of Europe, EasyJet. Um, Everybody is saying they can buy so many more Maxes for the same amount of money as buying A320 Neos. The question is
That's a
going to
big
be,
deal.
with the new Airbus A321, the XLR. The XLR might be a game changer because now we're starting to see the A321, which is a longer version of the A320. So it's the A321neo
Mm-hmm.
XLR. This thing has the capabilities of long haul flights in a narrow body platform with a heck of a lot less fuel consumption. So it'll be interesting to see. I think really it's going to come down to short haul flights or mid range flights are going to be the 737 Maxes, and anything above that is going to be the A321 XLR.
Well, it
But
still sounds like Boeing's going, it's an uphill battle. Nonetheless, of all the safety, the marketing, the strengthening the public's perception of the 737 Max again, right? It's still an uphill battle for Boeing, no matter the orders or ungrounding of all the fleets. I mean, it's not over yet, still, and Airbus sounds like they're retaking the fight back to them, frankly, and we could see some interesting shifts again in the market, frankly. I think.
Yeah, it will definitely be interesting. So, one of the things that I wanted to point out, so Thomas Pellini, for Business Insider, I
Hmm.
just want to say this quote. He said, "I flew on United Airlines' first 737 Max flight nearly 2 years after it was grounded, and it was exactly the boring flight that this airline and this airframe needed."
Huh.
So,
Just what you would expect: uneventful, boring, normal flight.
normal
That's what you
flight,
want.
which is exactly what you want as a passenger, and
Yeah.
you want the confidence of the pilot up front. You want confidence as a passenger that nothing is going to change your day by
Yep.
being on that plane. So I'm
Good
I
quote.
am interested. Um, hopefully soon I will be able to start getting out and traveling again. And I'm slowly, as I'm learning more and more about the Max and spending the time, I'm warming up to the idea of having a Max built into some of my travels this year, provided that things can get out there,
Yeah.
and some of those restrictions can be lifted. But um, that being said, that's kind of the big, uh, as far as airframe news. Companies,
Yeah.
companies in general. Um, just some
Yeah,
quick
still on the
hits.
the jetway. What are this? I mean, a lot of this is usually we're on the same page with a lot up in the sky stuff, but like I said, most of this is pretty new for me too. So what's some of the other stuff that you have here?
Um, big thing. Textron, who's the parent company for Cessna, they have released a lot of the information on the new Cessna Denali. So Cessna, everybody knows a Cessna is kind of the 172. It's the most popular general aviation
Hmm.
aircraft ever to exist. When you think of a small airplane, you think of a Cessna 172 Skyhawk.
Yep.
Um, Cessna is also, I mean, they've got a wide range of products. They've got the 172, the 182, the 204, the 208, amongst many, many others. But the Denali is a new, extremely fuel efficient, and very high class turboprop, dual turboprop, that Cessna has been trying to bring to the market for a little while. They are finally
Oh
bringing
wow,
this to
I'm
the
looking
market.
at it. Wow, that is not what I expected.
So, a lot of people, when you think private business aviation, you think of a small jet.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't understand is one, jet fuel is extremely expensive. I don't think anybody really doubted that, but jet fuel is extremely expensive.
Something to
But
remind yourself about, frankly.
yeah, but two, it is a lot
Wow.
easier to maintain a prop plane than it is a jet.
I'm looking at for those who are listening. I'm looking at this online right now. I am surprised. Not It's not what I expected, but I'm thoroughly impressed, frankly.
I'm very interested in it. I've always been a
Huh.
fan of light business prop planes. One of my favorite airframes was the now dead, unfortunately, Bombardier Q400 Dash 8 models. Dash spelled out DASH. Um, it was a commercial dual prop plane. I had the opportunity to fly one to Toronto with Porter Airlines, which is a budget airline that flies mostly in Canada, but they did have some stops in Chicago with Midway. But got to fly them, and I fell in love with that airframe almost instantly. A lot of people don't like it because you have prop noise while you're flying, but if you've got
Uh-huh.
some headphones in, I thought it was very comfortable. And for a light commercial aircraft. I thought it was a lot of fun to fly on. Now, scaled down slightly for the Denali, that's more high end business. Hey, have you seen the? Are you looking at the interior pictures of it or just the exterior pictures?
Both all encompassing.
So, what's your thought on that interior? As far as it's not what you'd expect from a prop
No,
plane,
I
right?
think that when I say that I'm thoroughly impressed, I think that's, I mean, it's elegant and handsome from the outside, which I expected, but also it you know looks a little bit different than I would have expected anyway. But especially the interior, yeah, it's not what I would have expected from this platform. I'm thoroughly impressed. I mean, think really handsome business jet interior. Frankly, I mean, I'm thoroughly impressed. It looks
Yeah,
great.
they're really going after the TBM 900 or the TBM series in general. Um,
This is impressive. I mean,
I'm
and
really
yeah,
interested to follow that as far as the small business aviation goes.
hmm
I'm really interested to see how that plane does,
this would be a
especially
good
since,
contender, right?
um, and I'm gonna butcher this name, but I believe it's Dahir that builds the TBMs. Um,
Okay,
I the TBM, I want to say it's the TBM 9 or the TBM 900 is the cover uh, um, plane, I guess, on or is one of the three cover planes on the new flight simulator game. It is a big deal when it comes to business aviation. It's a single turboprop. This Denali is going to come after it, and it's going to come after it hard. So I'm very interested to see
I
how that
agree.
goes.
It's gonna be a really big contender based on what I'm seeing and reading about it. Frankly, right now,
Um,
it's yeah, wow,
company news. Um, Speaking of Bombardier canceling projects and long-time airframes, I was extremely shocked to see that Bombardier is ending the Learjet productions.
right,
So the Learjet was the first and
yeah,
has been the gold standard up until very recently in the
yeah,
private business aviation jet market. Everybody kind of knows the Learjet, and even a lot of people
yeah.
confuse Cessna Citation jets for Learjets because people don't really know the difference. It's that's a Learjet. It's a Learjet. It's like the Kleenex.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
that's a good. Yeah, that it's what you said. I think it's as you said here, ending it in quarter 4 of this year.
yep.
That's a huge deal. That's huge. I
It
mean,
that's I would
why?
say
Like,
I would say
why?
that
I
it's
mean,
huge. Except when you look at the numbers, they are not selling nearly as many Lears, and Lear is just essentially the model name, much like a Ford Mustang, the Bombardier Lear platform.
well, yeah, I mean, like that's got to be it, right? But that like it was or is like
They're
the
not selling
industry
nearly as many as
standard.
of them as they're selling their Challenger series.
I mean, I'm sure. Yeah, it's obviously demand motivated, but at the same time, you know, it's that it's still a big deal. I mean, it's no matter
Oh, it's
what the
absolutely a
market
huge
demands,
deal.
but it's an industry standard. I mean, yeah, and shifting trends and all. Yeah, I get it, but it's just a little sad, maybe a little bit of a tear.
Yeah, it's I mean, I grew up knowing the Learjet. The Lear 45 was one of I mean it's a plane that I have posters of, that I have models of. It it'll be a sad day to see it go. Um,
At least we have the rest of this year.
right. Um, yeah. As far as large
It's a big
aviation
deal.
companies go, we did talk about Southwest. We talked about
Hmm.
United and Delta and their ungrounding of the 737s. Um, Peach Airlines, another budget brand.
Never heard of them. Are they U.S. based?
I don't believe so.
Let me find out where they're based out of.
Yeah, figure out where they're based out of and let me know. But um, they're not a huge airline, but they're
Well,
one
that's
of
an ugly paint job.
yeah. They're not pretty.
Sorry.
In my personal opinion, they're not pretty.
It's a Japanese budget airline based in. I am not going to pronounce that properly.
Okay, so yes, I
It's a
knew it wasn't.
Japanese budget airline.
Yeah, Japanese budget airline. One of their new initiatives, and they're flip flopping here. They don't know whether or not they're going to offer free COVID testing for their patrons at the gate, or if they are going to do some kind of reimbursement. But essentially, they're offering free COVID testing for anybody flying on their airline.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome.
really hoping to get people back in there. Then, and obviously that's probably going to bring money their way as well. Someone who could use that money
I'm just going to say someone
is Air
who's
Canada.
bleeding.
Yeah. Air Canada, who I believe at this point in time is partially owned by the country of Canada, by the Canadian government.
That would stand to reason based on some of the issues they're having.
Yeah, so essentially they're hemorrhaging money right now.
Pandemic's not helping.
No. So, I mean, Air Canada, obviously the largest airline in Canada, part of the Star Alliance with United, Lufthansa, a lot of the bigger names. Essentially, they are.
There's bleeding cash.
Yeah, and I'm trying to pull up the actual numbers here, but essentially,
I'm looking at Yahoo Finance. Apparently, Air Canada as a company has been running 3 huge quarterly losses in a row. They're trying to cut costs because to make up loss of passenger flight and cargo flights and pandemic and all that. Struggling with liquidity.
Last year, here I finally found the article. Last year they lost $4.65 billion with a B $billion with a 1 quarter loss of 1.48. I'm sorry. No, they lost $4.65 billion last year. 1.16 billion in a single quarter. So, that was.
I mean, if this says it enough, based on what I'm reading on Yahoo Finance, the company is predicting that to get back to 2019 revenue levels, it'll take 3 full years, potentially.
Easily,
And that's a long time to have big money problems. So, who knows? Who knows what?
Yeah, and it's it is going to be very interesting for them. And I hope to see them pull out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah, I think I have one little petty thing I want to talk about. Like air down before we leave the jetway here. So much airlines, and I just want to say that obviously I like SpaceX, but apparently it's known that Russia hates SpaceX and their success. And apparently, those who may not know, SpaceX has been busy launching satellites for its online, like free internet, whatever, like Starlink program. And apparently, I was reading an article from Jalopnik too, from Jose Rodriguez on earlier this month. And apparently, Russia's so petty that people would not be using like its sole state approved satellite internet provider, which is called Sphere, that they are going to fine people for using Starlink. So I just find that a little petty.
Well, and I know there was some news today that came out about Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin having a conversation on some kind of rather obscure app that I hadn't ever heard of. I think it's
Oh, yeah, I know what you're I don't know.
Clubhouse, something like that.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's a off the beaten track. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's one that's very popular in China because it's very hard to track what the messages are.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with the Starlink. Like to a point potentially could threaten like Russian state intermediate internet because I think Starlink is, quote unquote free. It's open. There's no doesn't it wouldn't allow Russia to, monitor how people are using, Starlink internet
Well,
services. So,
and that being said, I think that's part of the reason why Elon had reached out. In fact, I want to say he did it on Twitter. He reached out on Twitter specifically asking if Vladimir Putin would go on a one-to-one video chat with him to
hmm,
discuss everything going on with Starlink. So, and from what the reports were saying, that Vladimir Putin and the Russian government is actually considering it, which is very
that's
interesting.
big.
Yeah.
I will be watching that eagerly. Huh.
Yes.
I think absolutely as we if we see some news on that, we will definitely talk about that here on
Yep.
the Redline Resorts podcast. Maybe a little bit off the beaten track, but we'll keep it in off of the Redline Resorts ethos of anything with an engine. But we can make a stretch, I mean servers and space flight, and there's engines in there somehow.
Yeah. Well, you gotta get him in space somehow.
Exactly. So, with that, I think that wraps up down the jetway and leaves us for our last segment today, which would be fuel for thought, right?
Correct.
Do you want to maybe do a? I think the fuel for thought theme this week is going to be a little more general. Of I think we got three main things. We owe our listeners, what your non-compromise car would be. I think we hit that last. Something kind of interesting I found with car dealerships again. But I think maybe a quick review here as well is huge chip issues still from Ford, GM, Solaris. I mean, consumer models even are suffering plights of the chip shortages. Man, I mean, it's all over the place.
Yeah, and
It's
I'm sorry,
everywhere.
I accidentally misled you and put Stellaris. It should be Stellantis, but
Well, Larry,
that's my
that's
bad.
not my fault. All right,
Eh.
fingers do the walking, brain thinks so too. Yeah, no problem.
But yeah, so me personally, in my day to day life, like I said in the last podcast, I work on the fleet side of a lot of the major car manufacturers, at least here in the states, and I work with them on fleet vehicles and equipment for the fleet vehicles. That being said, I'm seeing personally a lot of customers just coming to me and going, "Hey, we're not getting cars this year," or
Yeah,
Ford, GM, um, Stellantis, or whoever, Dodge is usually the big fleet name in the United States from that group. You know, I'm not getting my cars this year. I'm not getting my heavy duty trucks. I'm not getting X, Y, or Z, and it's due to the chip shortage. So it is legitimate, and it's starting to affect a lot of things.
it's a big deal. I mean, I know that we've talked about it in your job, but I mean, I feel like every day I'm seeing more articles about it, and like certain lines of consumer cars are being halted. I mean, or pause production. It's a big deal. I mean,
It's a huge deal, and one of the things that I know is that these chips are not affecting electric cars, which I think is a huge reason we're seeing
yeah,
such a
I think you were
huge
talking
push.
about that in last episode, right? It's primarily what I think you said the end last episode of maybe was engine control modules that you don't need for electric
Right.
vehicles, but you do for internal combustion engines. I mean, one could say people have complained years and for years and years and years. I've got a 1966 that we've referenced Mustang convertible, and you can stand inside that engine compartment and work on the engine, right? I mean, there's no chips or anything in there. It's good old fashioned, and I it's how I grew up I learned how an engine by taking apart an old V6 Mustang engine piece by piece, and it was awesome. If you haven't done that, by the way, listeners, it's so cool just to take apart an engine and see how stuff works, frankly. But that said, I mean, you know, as things get more computerized, you obviously need more computer parts. You need chips. It's long known, right, that manufacturers in cars are computers. You can't get in the engine bays. I mean, you can't get your hand in there, right, to work on anything if you can access the engine. I mean, and this is potentially a problem of that is as technology progress, disruptions in the supply chain or like COVID clearly disrupted a lot of stuff and shifts in, market demands can wreak havoc elsewhere. And we're seeing that. Quickly. We live in a global economy and not, it's no longer just individual countries or one company that's affected when stuff like this happens. So, you
Yeah.
know, it's almost like the time is, but one could argue better, maybe better than ever. The time could be now for full steam ahead with electrics, right? That don't need these chips, like you said, could be a big reason. But
Yeah. And you know, speaking of, with the EV push, we had the discussion on the last podcast. What's something that you couldn't compromise on? I didn't really have a good answer at the time.
I can review mine for listeners who may not have tuned in or to remember.
Yeah.
I mean, mine I had a couple with like comfortability and I think if I remember like infotainment or something like that. Nick's is really good that I frankly hadn't thought of. It's incredibly important to me as well. But even though I know what Nick is gonna go over, mine was LED headlights or at least generally bright headlights. I can't stand when I don't have bright headlights, not the blinding kind or like laser but for me, I've driven cars with my personal vehicle has LED headlights as it even in 2003, and that's my non-compromise. I have to have bright, LED headlights. So I like driving at night, especially, and I need to see where I'm going, and it's a big deal for me, frankly. So that was mine. The one thing I won't is on. Nick has you have a great one that I didn't think of. Makes sense.
Yeah. So for me, I did a lot of thinking about it, and a lot of my thinking was actually done in the car.
Perfect.
Um, I won't compromise on the sound a car makes. I want my car, my vehicle, whatever I'm driving, to match the emotions of that vehicle. My Durango has a big V8 in it. It's an
Mm-hmm.
aggressive car with an aggressive sounding V8. Even the V6 version of the Durango has a very aggressive sound to it, and it matches the car.
So is it what I would ask you then, is it, the sound of the car has to be a certain way, or the sound of the car specifically matches the car? For example, is for you it has to be a throaty V8 or, you know, what about like a high pitched V6 or or here and there. Different cars have different sounds. Is it more the matching or more of a strict sound, like one sound?
I think it comes down to because I could fall asleep, and this is the true sign of a gearhead. I could fall asleep to the sound of my Durango's Hemi. I could fall asleep to the sound of a turbocharged flat six. I could fall asleep to the sound of a mid 2000s screaming V12 F1 car.
There it is. I was waiting for that one. Yeah, I might just
I
do that today.
I don't but here's the thing. If I know I'm driving an electric car,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want there to be some like electrical whining and gearbox noise to it.
I think that's why I like this. You know that I like the sound from Formula E cars a lot. I think it's cool. A
That's a
lot of people
controversial
don't like
topic
it.
in and of itself. Yes.
I know, but like I like hearing the gearbox. Like you would hear that if it weren't for the engine in an F1 car, right? I like that sound, and I agree. I it has me wondering now too. Is like I wish I would have said what you're saying. It sounds like like the sound has to match the car, and that's besides the like reliability. I'm not worried about reliability with electric cars. I'm worried about two things: range, which of course, like I've said, it'll get there. 400 miles using all the stuff, aircon, whatever. Right? But power grid and supply of energy to charge. But what about the sound? I don't want a silent car, right? I mean, the Taycan has a noise it can make. I kind of like the futuristic whir that it is. I mean, I don't know about Teslas, frankly, but that has me worried. Like, what about a sound, right? I mean, I don't know. Can we pump in like a throaty Hemi V8 in just in place, and that would work, right?
Well, see, but that's
Be
the thing
weird,
is
but it would work.
the pump. I can't stand the pumped in sounds.
It never sounds even the
No,
best pumped in audio, sound even in the best pumped in audio still sounds like pumped in audio.
and
So arguably,
here's the thing. I like specific sounds when it comes to engines. I would say my
mhm,
top three were the ones that I listed.
I would
And
have to agree with
anything
you
out of Dodge's lineup of V8s
there.
running through that exhaust setup that they've got on those cars.
That Hellcat with the wine. Mm,
I could even do without the supercharger whine. I like the supercharger
mm.
whine, don't get me wrong, but I could do without it. That you've been in my Durango when it's in sport mode and I launch it. It's that that noise never gets old to me. Another
Yeah.
noise that never gets old, a turbocharged flat six will never get
Well,
old,
that
or
should
even
that
an
should go
air cooled
without saying
flat six.
for I
But
think for both of us, frankly.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I think it literally a sound that I can hear, and it will never fail to make me smile.
hmm
Is an early 2000s F1 car at 16,000 RPM.
I'd have to agree.
There is something about that sound, and I don't
It's
have
just
anything.
a scream. That's it's just a scream.
Yeah,
I
and
love it.
when the car doesn't match the sound, it makes me feel odd inside, and I think
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
that's I don't know, there's a lot that goes into that.
That's something with a lot. I mean, you think about it, cars have always had. That's part of the problem. Like where like you see government agencies mandating electric cars making noise when vehicles travel under a certain mile per hour or a certain speed, right? I mean, for safety or not, cars have always made sounds. I miss the, me, I love electric cars, and I grew up, not in the era of when this was normal, but in electric cars where you could tell what the car was, like well, my grandfather's, era. You could tell what the car was by the sound it made, without even looking at what it was coming down the street. And for me, that same thing, but at like car shows and things like that, electric car shows. And sound is something for I think for a petrol head like you or I, anybody frankly who loves cars, that's a big deal. No matter how much or little you might think about it, it's a big deal. And electric cars need to have a sound, frankly, because it could be disorienting. I think I've seen reports of like when you're so used to the ritual of driving, right? And when you don't have any noise in the car besides say maybe road noise, a faint electric motors whir, it's still basically silent from what you're used to, right? So the question is, what kinds of sounds will we have, and quote unquote, will they match the electric cars? But then again, do you even have something to compare it to? So how would you be able to say that sound matches, the Taycan? That sound
Well,
matches the
and that's
e-tron
something that
GT.
you'd have to. I mean, for me personally, it's something that I'd have to investigate with every car I was looking at.
Yeah.
But
It sounds dumb though. Could you imagine going by, a Taycan and each like any car, frankly, right? It's like, you know, you can imagine, I'll go for a test drive. We want to check out how it drives, the suspension, travel, pickup, the transmission. Nah, I want to see what sound it makes.
yeah,
I mean,
essentially,
I think that's what you'd be doing. I mean, like if it would make sense to you or me, you're out. like, would that necessarily make sense to the car salesman or the saleswoman? I mean, yeah, just want to see what it sounds like. And then imagine if you don't like it, just plain walking out. Like, that's it,
Well,
you know?
speaking
I
of not
mean,
being able to walk out of a dealership,
oh god, you want me to go over that? I saw this. Okay,
yeah.
maybe round up fuel for thought here for this week episode. So, um, I did see something. Speaking of car dealerships, where it sounds really weird, but apparently, I hope it's not a normal thing. But apparently, car dealerships, some at least here in the states, or some reports where they don't allow customers to leave. Not maybe going so far as to hold people, hostage, but not letting people leave unless they sign paperwork or buy a car, essentially. And I found that very weird. I'm trying to find the
How
article right now.
how does
Yeah, I mean, that's what your brain thinks. Like, that doesn't make sense, right? But
what
apparently,
legal basis do they have?
well, there isn't. I mean, frankly, there isn't. But apparently, I was reading. I'll try to try to find the article so I can give credit where credit is due, as I pull it up here. It sounds like I think it was in Maryland, if I remember correctly. There's a lawyer who was it was just a conversation piece almost. And apparently, he's heard before of instances where dealerships, like managers, don't let people leave. One that he remembered was where a woman was, I think it was in Maryland or an eastern US state in a dealership, and she had signed paperwork to buy a car for a, let's say, an agreed upon price, but then what she was signing was what she had not agreed to pay. And then the manager wanted to get her to sign it, what sounded like additional paperwork saying that was okay. And then when she tried to leave, she eventually got past the sales manager and all that, but the sales manager had one of the employees park a car in front of her car, so she couldn't leave without signing the paperwork. And only until she called the police and they showed up was she actually able to leave. And another was two similar instances like that.
I'm literally
It's
speechless. I want to give a response, but I literally cannot.
like car buying isn't the easiest thing in the world, right? Like, there are people who are doing it right and doing it and getting better at it, but that's not really something you would think about would happen, right? Like, it's just I found there were a couple stories like that. And it sounds like, frankly, it sounds like to get people to be left alone, they had to call the police or at the very least threaten to call the police. I've said before, I just recently helped my parents buy a new car, and I had a great experience at that Ford dealership, and I can't imagine being literally stopped from leaving for not buying a car. Um, I'm sure it's a very rare occurrence, right? I'm sure these are legit horror stories of all, like, the worst horror stories of car buying horror stories. But as I still can't find the article for some reason. I believe it was from Jalopnik. I don't know who wrote it, but I just found it. Hang on. Okay, so here it is. The title is quote, apparently some car dealers think it's okay to detain customers against their will. Written by Tom McParland, I believe yesterday, February 14th on Jalopnik. And yeah, it's talking about here's the actual thing. After signing a contract for a new car, our client realized that she had been charged more than she agreed to pay. The resulting dispute leads to the car dealership manager trying to force her to sign paperwork that she didn't want to sign and was not necessary, given that the sale was unfortunately already completed. She refused, and despite threats of the manager, went back to her car to try to leave. However, when she returned to her car, she found herself blocked in by another car that the manager had an employee parked directly in front of her. It was only after calling the police that the dealership allowed her to leave. Talk about a horror story.
That's insane.
I mean, there's another one that sounds, and apparently, like, of course, you would sue, and it sounds like another one where they were able to take that dealership to court for about $100,000. Another case where apparently this person took her car in for service and showed interest in a new car deal, only to have the dealer hide the keys for her trade-in for hours until she too called the police. Could you imagine that either? I mean, oh my, I'm sure they are very rare.
Yeah, that's
I mean, if you needed any other, reason
it's,
to
that's
think that buying a
abhorrent
car is a
behavior
nightmare.
as a salesperson.
I've never had a, frankly, I'll be honest, I've been to a lot of car dealers. Even when I was in high school, I was looking at like buying cars with other people and family friends and ex girlfriends, families, and whatever. Frankly lucky. I've never yet, quote unquote, had a bad experience at a car dealership. I've never not felt respected or quote unquote free to leave. But I
Um,
don't know, man.
I've always
This is
felt free to leave.
shocking.
However, I've had some horrible experiences at well, it's one specific car dealership.
Mm.
Um, I don't
Maybe
know.
it's something we go into.
Were you with me, or was someone else with me in the
I,
car?
I was not. I can say that I have never been to a dealership with you, so it would not have
No, no,
been me.
no. I'm talking. Every time I pass by this one specific dealership that has, on multiple occasions, treated me
Oh,
absolutely horribly.
with the Pacifica.
Yeah, with our 2004 Chrysler
Oh,
Pacifica,
yeah, I've
with
been
my
in the car when you
Durango,
say
with my
choice
old
word.
Durango. Every time I've ever brought a vehicle
Mhm.
to that specific dealership, I have had nothing but problems. I've had them not tighten the lug nuts on my wheel, and my
I
wheel came
remember
off on
that.
the highway.
Oh, yeah.
Um, After a simple oil change and tire rotation, they never tightened the lug nuts on my car.
Which, if you
Um,
don't realize, that's a big safety issue.
Huge, 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 huge. Especially since my tire was coming off of my car on the highway.
Not to mention could destroy machinery down the tire coming off when you're driving down a highway, right? I mean,
Yeah, well, and the car never drove right after that. After that
yeah.
incident, there was always a little. Everything was always just a little bit off after that. I've had. Well, we took the 2004 Chrysler Pacifica in there,
Mhm. I remember those ones.
and wanted to have it evaluated because it was falling victim to the Pacifica rot of the subframe, the front
Yeah.
engine cradle. Very common issue on 2004 Chrysler Pacificas. I think even Zach mentioned it on the podcast when we had
I
Zach
think
on
so.
as a
Yeah.
guest. Um, but very very typical issue with the Pacifica, and uh, we brought it in. They told us it was going to be an exorbitant amount of money, and when we went to go pick up the car, it had snowed 4 days earlier when we dropped it off. We dropped it
Mhm.
off, it had not snowed. It snowed during that time. And when we went to go pick it up, there was such a thick layer of snow. There is no way that they spent the 6 hours that they billed us for inspection indoors looking at that car when there was that layer of snow. It had snowed one night. It was a heavy snow in Chicago. And when we picked up the car, it was still covered in snow. And I about lost it on that service manager. And I vowed never to go there again. And I haven't since. And every time I drive by it, I have some choice words. So,
Well, what kind of sucks is you wouldn't think that you have to, right? But with anything, even going to a car dealership, you gotta read reviews and you gotta see what the experiences are like.
I even
You'd
had,
hope that you wouldn't have to worry about that, but you do now, right?
yeah, so this is going to be a little hard to follow, but my cousin's friend's ex girlfriend used to be the billing manager at that dealership.
Hmm.
And after the incident with my Durango where the wheel came off, and I went back, I had the car towed back to them to discuss it. She approached me when I was out with my cousin and my cousin's friend at a bar one night. This was back in 2017. Um, she approached me and she's like, "Hey, I just wanted you to know, um, the service manager wanted me to tell you to not hold it personally against the dealership and come back for more service." And I looked her dead in the eyes and I'm like, I am never, ever setting foot in that dealership again.
Hmm.
Ever.
Unfortunately, even in what bad situations and horrible experiences, there's still good people, you know, that
Well, yeah,
recognize
and
the problems and
here's the thing.
yeah.
People work at dealerships, and you could have one bad apple that spoils the bunch. That's a common turn of phrase, and it can be true in a lot of cases. Um, there were a lot of very nice people at that dealership, but more than anything, a lot of them were very inconsiderate and very rude, especially in that service department. And a lot of those people um, are still there, which is why I won't go back.
Hmm.
Um, the owner of the dealership was on the phone with me, or myself. The vice president of service and warranty for all of Chrysler,
Jeez.
and some one of the insurance agents that was trying to take care of the engine cradle issue with the '04 Pacifica.
Hmm.
And when it was addressed that we were billed for 6 hours worth of stuff, yet the car never was moved from the outdoors indoors, which this inspection required a lift, and unless they had a lift
Well,
outside that
clearly
I
I mean
couldn't
to
see,
get I
yeah.
mean
So
to get to
clearly they
get
hadn't done it. So in the process of us discussing it with the dealership, the owner of the dealership hung up on Chrysler, and until that
wow.
dealership changes hands, and that service manager and that owner are gone permanently, I will never set foot in that dealership again.
Wow,
That's a very
that
rare
takes
case.
some that takes some, shall we say, some
Some
I don't know
cojones.
what the sure, well, some cojones to, even though you're the dealership owner, to hang up on the phone with essentially bigwigs at a bigwig at corporate. I mean, interesting. I wonder if there's any backlash for. I said I feel lucky, even more lucky now than I have to yet to have a bad, unrespectable, experience at a dealership, and I've been to many a service center, and I mean, heck, I just feel lucky. Like even when like I've had my right, and you wouldn't expect that person to be top notch in terms of like customer service oriented, and I swear I left when the guy came to the house to replace my windshield in my 2003 Lexus, and we struck up a conversation about the Mustang. I was showing it to him. We were talking about how he protects his cars and my car. He even gave me a bottle of window glass cleaner that Gerber guys know to be like the secret. I like old glass cleaner that has real ammonia in it. I feel like that with newspaper does the best job, and you can't buy it anymore, right? And this is like the new version of that, frankly, best you could get. I mean, I feel so I like that. Those are my usual interactions with even like automotive service people. I mean, I feel lucky, man. Frankly,
Well, and
hopefully that
I've
stays
here's
that
the other
way.
thing. I've had fantastic, absolutely fantastic
Yeah,
dealership experiences. One of which had to
it's
do
they're
with,
humans, man. It just comes down to the human.
well, yeah, in the sales manager at the local Mazda dealership where Zach got his Mazda 3, and my parents are currently trying to work out some leasing deals on a new CX-5.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, the guys over there, phenomenal. Um, if you want to know who I'm talking about, Zach, my brother, is shooting cars on YouTube. Um, I try to shout him out as much as possible. He had in fact, a very fantastic video today go up about the increasing prices of FDRX7s.
Hmm.
And that was going to kind of lead into something that we're saving for next week. But and maybe we discuss having Zach on to kind of talk about that topic too. But
Which one was that?
about the millennial car collectors.
Those trends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, well, reach out to me and say, Zach's been really putting out some, like, not that he doesn't already, but great content. I mean, I haven't yet watched this new video. Let's needed to say before my head hits the pillow today. I will be watching the newest video. I mean, frankly, I'm sure he said it before. I'd love to have him back on, but just the way that he does his content is just, I think he either said it to me once, in person because I know him decently well now, and see him whenever I come down to visit you. Usually I talk a little with Zach, right? But or if he said it here, just the way he creates his content, right? With like what would his friends want to hear? What would his friends and family, and that's what would he say to them? He's not buttering up the car or any of his content. It's just real, it's just true and real, and I love it. I'll be tuning into that video, but I think it'd be interesting to have his opinion. You're right on millennial car collecting trends and how they're changing that market,
Well,
especially because
being that he is a millennial, and between him and I, we've got essentially two collector cars.
yeah, I mean that's something I want to talk about. Frankly, I saw something on Motor Authority about. I guess, yeah, I've already said I've grew up in that era as well. Like that's my first love of cars came from old classics, and my grandparents used to be really heavy. Whenever I would go visit, I would go up there. I lived practically a third of my life in the Northwoods of Wisconsin with them, right? And every time I'm up there, every single like weekend, we go to a car show all over, Wisconsin, frankly. And I mean, I loved it. There was nothing better than as a kid just getting to talk to owners of new old cars at the time, really old cars. Oh man, yeah. It'd be cool to have him on to get his opinions. So let's reach out to him.
Yeah. So, with that being said,
I think
um,
that's is that the checkered flag on this week.
yeah, I believe so. So
All
do
right.
do go check out Zach's channel, Shooting Cars on YouTube. I know he's got a couple different social media handles, but we'll let him explain those if he comes on next week. But don't hold us to
Yeah.
that.
I know we had a little bit of a longer episode this week because there's a lot of random stuff here and there that's happened. We restructured the format here with our new segments and some transitions and so on. So with that, I think, like I said, that's the finish line checkered flag for this week. We hope it was enjoyable for the video audience as well as you listening to us. Nick already plugged them, but in the beginning, you can reach out to us at podcast@redlineresorts.com. Our handle on all social platforms is @redlineresorts. We'll be back next week with another lineup of topics to talk about in the on the ground, in our heads, and in the air, frankly, with our new segments. And until then, take care, everyone, and be safe. Thanks for tuning in this week.